Well, a warm welcome then again here. Hello and good morning to our conference. It's great to look in so many inspiring faces of so many actively engaged people here. And I'm really happy that we managed to invite so many people from so many different countries all around the world here to meet in Bonn for our strategy conference on civil society for the great transformation. My name is Tilman Santarius. I'm from Germanwatch, and I will explain to you some of the hypotheses and ideas that are behind what we've put on the agenda here. But let me first maybe introduce to you some people so that we get to know each other a little bit more and that you get to know the people that will be of particular relevance during the next couple of days. First of all, in the name of Germanwatch, I would also like to present to you our cooperation partner, the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy. Jim Harkness, right here in the front, will address you in a couple of minutes with his keynote speech, the president of the IATP. And I would like to particularly mention Shefali Sharma, who is sitting there in the back with a red scarf. Hi, Shefali. Shefali has been in contact with you over the last couple of weeks and months, I guess. She was part of the team that organized this conference and the brain from IATP behind this whole process. And I would now like to present you also the other persons who set this conference up and organized it, the core team of that conference, my colleagues from Germanwatch, Stefan, of course, the head of it all. Stefan, where are you? There. And Bentje, Charlotte, Rixa, Jenny, and Jan. I don't know if you can stand up if you are in the room. So together with Shefali, I think you all deserve a great applause. And the preparation for this whole conference started just in March this year, so we had a hell of a timeline and a schedule that was very pressing, and I think you guys did a very great job. We wanted to have an international strategy conference with a global and a cross-cultural perspective. So that is why we did not want to set up the agenda as Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy in Germanwatch only, but we invited a number of people in what we call the steering committee, people from different countries around the world, which together with us designed the agenda, identified the issues, wrote background papers, etc. And this steering committee, not all of them could be here today, but I would like to mention those in the room. There's Sunita Dubey from South Africa, there's Candido Grabowski from Brazil, there's Wael Maidan from Lebanon, Orion Kriegman from the United States, Srinivas Krishnaswamy from India, Lina Lee from China, and Michael Naberhaus from Germanwatch. You will get to know these guys in the workshops and throughout the next couple of days, but I think you also deserve an extra applause because it was great how we could work together with you over the last couple of weeks. Thank you. Let me now introduce also Dirk Hulverscheid. Dirk is back there waving. Dirk is going to be the sort of independent facilitator over the next couple of days. He will take the microphone in a couple of minutes also. And if there are any questions regarding facilitation, moderation, or other stuff, Dirk is happy to be there and answer and help you out with all he can. Now finally, let me express my deepest thanks to the Mercato Foundation, which gave the grant for this meeting. It wouldn't happen without the Mercato Foundation. Unfortunately, Bernhard Lorenz, the head of it, cannot be here today, but I'm very happy to introduce Vera Lehmann to you, who's sitting right next to Jim Harkness in the front here. And Vera has accompanied this project from the very scratch until today, gave comments, did the quality check, and we're happy that you're here, and she will also address you with some welcome words in a few minutes. Thank you, Vera and Mercato Foundation. Now, before I will enter in a deeper speech here, let me suggest that we make it a little bit more interactive and that all of you just say hello to the person right and next, left and right and next to you. Say hello, shake hands for a minute, because it's good to know who's sitting next to you. Okay, I see some cards being exchanged already. There would actually be more handshakes. Thank you. Seems we are right into the discussion already. It seems we are right into the discussion already. We could actually have more handshakes during these days and right in the morning here. But some of the guests, some of the participants, even some of our speakers on the workshop's agenda. Excuse me. Can I draw your attention again? Some of the people that wanted to be here unfortunately had to cancel their flights in the very last minute because as we've seen in the media all over the place in the last couple of days, Hurricane Sandy was threatening airports in all of Northern America. And so this is very sad that some people cannot be here today. And on the other hand, the example of that Hurricane Sandy brings us right into the midst of the perspective and of the issue of our conference here. For the astonishing series of extreme weather events that hit North America over the course of this year, not only Sandy, but also in the summer and the spring this year already, is yet another phase of climate change, probably not a phase, but a grimace of a warming planet that looms on the horizon. And the increasing number of extreme weather events, storms, floods, droughts, all over the planet, lead to destroy agricultural harvests more and more every year. And those lost harvests are a key reason why food prices have gone up. And the high food prices are one of the key reasons why we've seen this historically unprecedented high number of hungry and malnourished people around the world in these days. So we see the interdependence here between climate and food. And I would say realizing the right to food requires to keep the climate right. Likewise with energy policies. Providing access to energy can easily interfere with the right to food. For instance, Coal India Limited, there are many people from India here, Coal India Limited is probably the largest coal mining company in the world, regularly pollutes waters, forests, fields, and thus threatens farmer livelihoods. Not to speak of the carbon emissions from that coal, which further aggravate climate change. At the same time, we in Germany here and in several other countries, we see how ill-advised policies for renewable energies such as biofuels lead to large-scale investment into biofuels. You can now buy gasoline at the gas station in Germany and other European countries that is made of a percentage of biofuel. These biofuels worldwide also lead to climbing food prices. So we see that not only requires to realize the right to food to keep the climate right, but also to get the climate and energy policies right. And thirdly, even policies for food, for realizing the right to food, can do more harm than good. For example, if they follow a fossil type of second green revolution strategy, which does not accept ecosystem resilience and the planetary boundaries. Take, for example, that these days, some governments, World Bank projects, even some civil society foundations, which are unfortunately not in the room here, hand out fertilizer starter packages to farmers all around the world. Now, these fertilizers not only create new dependencies for the farmers, they can further lead to soil degradation, they destroy biodiversity, they can in the end lead to reduced harvests, while at the same time the energy-intensive production of that fertilizer adds new greenhouse gases to the air. So let me phrase that interdependence in a more metaphysical formula. Only if we accept nature's rights can we realize human rights. And these kind of interdependencies between climate and food and energy are at the heart of the perspectives that drives this conference. For we believe that the strategies civil society organizations develop these days must be most sensitive to these interdependencies. The time for silo mentalities is definitely over. We need to get out of the perspectives that agriculture and food and energy and climate policies are developed in a nimbus. I mean, still today we see many policies and the work of many national ministries and international institutions being characterized by that silo mentality. But we as civil society, we want to be and we can do better. I think we want to be ahead and think systemically. And that is why we brought so many people from different communities here, from the agriculture, food, energy, and climate side together to strategize in common how can we realize the right to food, improve the access to clean energies, and at the same time reduce today's human footprint on the planet by acknowledging the planetary boundaries. The idea for this conference actually was born 3 years ago. As you will have noticed by now the latest, it's not about a climate conference, but the idea came up in a climate context, namely after the Copenhagen Climate Summit. That's when we started the discussions with Mercator Foundation, with others, to set this up. Because many of us had left Copenhagen with a depressing feeling. A fair and ambitious global climate agreement could have been a single major multiplier on the way towards sustainability, but this simply didn't materialize. Now, there are many factors that have played into the failure of Copenhagen. I don't want to repeat this here, but what we still ask ourselves, what role did civil society play in this? Right? Did we pursue the most successful strategies? What could we have done better? So this is what we want to ask here ourselves. And I mean, no doubt at Copenhagen and in the run-up to there, we were super strong on content. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of policy papers, scientific reports, think tank issue papers on burden sharing, climate finance, adaptation, etc., etc. But in the end, key players were unable and unwilling to find common ground. So now we need to think even harder and understand even better the impediments that can, or the challenges that can lead us out of that stalemate. Now we need to find a global solution, how we can move to a global solution, even if some of our governments might not be prepared for that. So how can we as civil society help build a proactive alliance? For instance, between the EU, India, China, with further country groupings such as AOSIS or the African countries, within the UN negotiations, but even beyond that, in order to move the issue forward. This is what we want to discuss in one of the working groups tonight and tomorrow morning. Now, finding ways out of the government stalemate is one issue. If we want to improve civil society's effectiveness on our work, we also need to look at what currently impedes us, ourselves. So what are our stalemates? Until today, civil society is split on the question of climate equity. But it's my deepest conviction that this split is a loss for all sides. It holds too many resources hostage for ideological differences, of which our children may maybe ask us one day, guys, did you notice what was going on in the real world by arguing amongst each other? And indeed, what is going on in the real world is emissions rising and rising and rising. The first decade of the 21st century saw emissions rising ever faster than before in human history. Right? In the first decade of this century, we experienced an increase of energy intensity for the first time since 100 years. And what is the bitter truth? What is the dramatic result of that development? Recent research suggests that it is now, we've now entered a situation where it is practically not possible anymore to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by an amount that keeps us below 2 degrees warming, let alone 1.5 degrees warming. Everyone will suffer the consequences, but those most poor and hungry may not survive it. So friends, for the sake of those marginalized and poor people who suffer most from the climate chaos, we should find ways how we as civil society get past our stalemates. And of course, this is not what we want to do at this conference here. It's not possible to find an answer to these differences and divergencies within one single conference, and it's not even on our agenda. But maybe we can offer bits and pieces to find new and common ground for understanding climate equity. For instance, maybe we can better integrate human rights principles and perspectives in our understanding of climate equity, because if we apply human rights principles to the climate context, it follows that we must do everything we can to stop further rising emissions now. We should rather cool the planet, actually. So let us try to find common ground on human rights principle climate strategies for a cool planet. Now, I've talked about the interdependencies between climate, energy, and food. There's another interdependence which has come to the fore most explicitly in the last couple of years due to the financial and economic crisis. the interdependence between the social and ecological crisis we are dealing with every day, and the shape and condition of our capitalist market economies out there. Now, I know this is an old issue, but it hasn't gone away, right? And it was in 1944 that the scientist Karl Polanyi coined the term Great Transformation, which we've taken on as the title for this conference. And Karl Polanyi stated that in modern capitalist societies, economic transactions are not any longer embedded in a set of social and cultural and religious norms as they had been for millennia. No, but that economic transactions have nowadays become disembedded to solidly follow the logic of profit and output maximization. And as a result, of course, modern market economies have experienced unprecedented growth rates. But it is this growth which is now threatening the carrying capacity of the Earth as our physical basis of survival. And it's this growth that more and more comes at the expense of further social exclusion and the marginalization of those 1 or 2 billion people which are simply not part of the global market economy. So what is deeply needed, we believe, is to achieve a re-embedding of the economy in societal values beyond the logic of profit and output maximization. And that is why it's so important that we as civil society must promote forms of production that can alleviate poverty and create wealth, but at the same time get along the fatal quest of profit and output maximization. We will discuss, for example, in one of the working groups, the role of solar and food cooperatives as a prime example of social forms of productions. And I hope that there will other forms of commons-based production and social networks pop up during this conference. And we can ask the question, what can civil society do in order to give a boost to these initiatives? What kind of regulation at the national and international level do they need? What kind of strategy dynamizes the actions on the different levels, grassroots and policy advocacy? Because I'm sure we as organizations from the ag and the food and the climate side, we should not leave these questions to other organizations which might be more familiar with economic issues or so. No, I deeply believe that we will not reach our very own goals of food security, of sustainable rural development, of climate protection, if the growth-oriented global market economy remains unchallenged. Now, the forces or the logic of the system, of course, is only one side of the medal or the coin. The other side are our mental infrastructures on the demand side. Both high food prices and high greenhouse gas emissions are in part due to high demand for meat, for processed food, for consumer goods, and so. I mean, imagine the numbers again. Almost a third of the world's population, well more than 2 billion people, today are global consumers. They live on the average income of a lower middle class person here in Bonn, right? With a car in the family, meat for lunch every day, the house full of gratuitous gadgets, vacations on shiny palm beaches. And no doubt that this consumerism has been invented in the North, but today it's 50-50. Half of those global consumers live in the urban centers of the rapidly developing world. And no matter if it's northern or southern, will these all-consuming lifestyle threaten poorer people's lands and livelihoods and the planet? So we need to tackle consumerism, overconsumption, and its drivers squarely. I think too many organizations have not taken up the challenge to confront consumption. So let us join those few, and some of them are here also. Let us join those few who do this already. Let us find more ideas and creative campaigns on strategies for sustainable lifestyles. Well, I said the interdependencies between food, climate, and energy, and also the driving force, some of the driving forces I mentioned, demand side and the systems logic, can unite our policy agendas, our campaign agendas also. There are many more issues which we could tackle together as communities and with joint forces. Take, for example, fossil fuel subsidies. It's a sheer unbelievable number of 600 billion to 1 trillion US dollars. 1 trillion in German is eine Billion. It's a number that we can, well, we are more familiar to it now since all these stimulus packages, but before it was a number which was sheer unbelievable, right? Which plays mostly into the hand of climate-damaging energy carriers and at the same time into an export-led industrial type of food system. So let's come together and imagine how much money we could free for sustainable family farming, for climate finance and adaptation and mitigation, for rural development, if we could get rid of these subsidies, right? Or another issue which we will tackle in one of the working groups, corporate control. The rate of market concentration and oligopolies are particularly high in the agriculture and the energy markets alike. Now, for the sake of food security and the emancipation of sustainable energies, we need to democratize our food chains. So let us come together, because in this fight of David against Goliath, of civil society against the tremendous capital and political power of corporations, we need to ally, we need to strategize together, and we need to campaign together. So let me close here by saying that I know it's huge issues we have on our agenda, and I'm certain that the path towards a great transformation, towards that re-embedding of the economy, is not a waltz. It's a tremendous challenge, but maybe we can grasp it as we in the room here, that we have the freedom to be the actors on the scene. So let's take this conference as a responsibility of that freedom on the one hand, and as an opportunity for all of us for a retreat, to step back from the hundreds of emails in our inboxes and the schedules that have to be completed and the meetings that we have every day. And let's find some time and the mood here to reflect our working agendas. And if we then leave this conference with a couple of fresh ideas, by slightly changing something we've done before, by building new alliances since we got to know new people, then I think this conference has been a success. And to achieve this, I think what matters are you. It depends on your engagement, so please take this conference into your hand, make it your own, and think creative, think critical, think big. Thank you.